I will just. So let us begin with the prayer together. You can all mentally just say a prayer. Om Hasato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let us begin the meditation first with a little bit preparation. So as we know, we try to sit straight. Just a reminder, as much as possible, if wherever you're seated, either flat on the ground or on a chair, try to sit straight as much as possible without too much of stress, somewhat balanced, not too tight nor too loose. We can start with just taking a few deep breaths and exhale. Few more deep breaths and exhalation. Also, you can try taking a deep breath, tensing the whole body and letting go, especially if you're feeling cold or lazy, then this is a good one just to breathe in, tense the whole body and exhale forcefully. And since we are going to be doing a meditation based on Vijnana Bhairav of Lord Shiva, we can invoke the presence of Lord Shiva in a form and yet know that essence of that Lord Shiva is that Shiva Tattva. That essence of Lord Shiva and the essence of us is the same reality. So as we internally, mentally invoke the presence of Lord Shiva, we are trying to awaken our own essential Shiva Tattva. So invoke also that Guru Tattva in that Shiva Tattva. That guiding factor of the Guru comes through that Lord Shiva for us, through these teachings. Now we will today do a couple of practices from the teachings of Vijnana Bhairav. And the first one most of us are familiar with. And this is the practice of first bringing our awareness to the breathing. So the two parts of this. So first, as we become aware of the breathing, we try to find that point where that breath comes to an end, whether inhalation or exhalation. We can see the turning point of the breath. So as the exhalation slowly recedes and comes to that gap. So before that pause, so initial stages, this is an easier practice than trying to look for the gap. And the idea behind this is to go beyond the mind and abide in that consciousness. So here we start with watching the turning point or the ending point of the inhalation and the ending point of the exhalation. Just mentally, we note that. And slowly now we can move on to looking for that gap between the breath. So here we are not using any mantra as of now. We're just trying to look for that gap. So the mind is connecting to the breath as long as there is movement. So when there is no movement, we naturally don't force it. There's naturally no movement. We try to look for that space, that openness, where we are trying to experience directly that consciousness, that aparokshanubhuti, direct experiencing. So this is actually the first practice that Lord Shiva gives to Parvati and to everyone. Of the 112 practices, this is the first one. So we are looking for that space before the inhalation starts and before the exhalation begins. The Utpatti Sthana, as the Lord says. The sutra is Urdhve Prano Yado Jivo Visargatma Parocharet Utpatti Dvitiya Sthane Bharanat Bharitha Sthitihi. So the Utpatti is that starting point before it begins. The two starting points he points out to. So in that there is an experiential awareness. Now, if you're not able to feel that gap, then you can look again for that turning point, that ending point. And if you're able to look for that gap, if you're able to experience that gap, then you can go one step further and try to note that awareness which experiences that gap. So there is an experience of that space, that empty space of between the breaths. And if you can penetrate further naturally, then you can experience that awareness of that space, that awareness of that gap. Whole point is to step behind the mind. That Shiva Tattva is awake behind this individual entity. So the moment we step out of that mind, meaning be a witness, we abide in that Shiva Tattva. So we don't need to forcefully shut that mind. We can choose to step out of that mind. So the two concepts here, one is that energy factor, and the other is the consciousness factor. And this is the Shiva Shakti, the Bhairava Bhairavi thing we are working with here. So from these teachings, that energy rises from that consciousness and merges back into that consciousness. So all our thinking, restless activity of the mind, and that positive activity of the mind also, they are all energy factor. And the more we are able to see through it, then we are not caught up with that energy. That energy will naturally subside back into that consciousness. So all our thoughts, all our feelings, the origin of that, if we go back to that origin, so here we are trying to abide in that gap, that space, and that awareness. So we can increase that awareness into that watching of the breath as well. Sometimes when we keep doing this, we can get a bit lost. So there is one more practice that um, Lord Shiva gives us, and this is using sound. So here we are going to use the word Om. So as when we chant the word Om, this slowly getting to listen to that anahata, that unstuck sound. So the Lord tells us in listening to anything, like even a flowing river, there is that constant anahata sound that can be heard. And this anahata sound, which is the sound in the heart chakra, this leads us to that supreme state of Brahman, Shabda Brahman. And so here we're going to use the pranava sound, the Om sound. So initially, I'm going to chant a few times. So two things again, similar like our breath practice, as the Om sound starts receding, you try to listen to that ending point especially. And later on, we try to focus on the gap between the sound. So as I chant audibly, you all can chant mentally and try to focus on that space, that gap. And this is that point of complete open awareness, bare awareness, as the Buddhists say it, naked awareness. Oh. 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 Now we can mentally try it a few times. Chant the Om, or a little whisper tone is also fine. And feel that gap, that space. The first, just try to focus on that gap, that space. And then later on, you can try to focus on that awareness of that space. There is that sense of emptiness between that chanting of that sounds when we do it on a periodic way, meaning at a regular interval of break. Just like how in the breathing we experience that gap, similarly, we chant and feel that space. So the Lord says, Pranavadi Samucharat Plutante Shunya Bhavana. So there is that in that pranava sound in between, there is when we elongate that sound, Shunya Bhavana, that sense of emptiness. And in that emptiness, he says, is that Bhairavi, that Shakti is revealed. So that essence of Prakriti, Maya, whatever we want to call it, we become a witness to that. We don't try to forcibly stop any thoughts or anything, but we just try to stay in that experience awareness, experiential awareness. rather than just focusing on that experience, we try to stay on that experiential awareness. So now, for the last few minutes, you can choose to either focus on the breath or the sound, whatever you're able to relate better to. But here, for the last few minutes, we are not just focusing on that space or the gap, but we try to focus on the whole experience, not in a experiential way, but in an awareness way, trying to just be a witness to whatever experience you're having with the breath or the sound. So there are two things we are trying to intellectually hold that view. So here the practice is based on the view we are bringing in, which is that sense of seeing through the activities by bringing in awareness, and yet knowing that activities itself are empty. They are by itself, there is no essence in them. That essence is in that Shiva Tattva, that consciousness, which is that foundation and which is the only reality. So there is a all experiences, everything we are seeing is like a elusive like thing that appears on that substratum of reality, which is that consciousness. So just hold on to this view, and whatever experience come, we don't push it away, but we see it from that sense of seeing a movie, an elusive reality. And in the last couple of minutes, we can bring in a sense of gratitude and a reverence. And as a individual mind, we bow to that greater essence of Lord Shiva. So mentally we bow to that supreme reality. And this is a conscious superimposition we do, like Adhyaropa, because we are limited in our mind. So from that mind, we take on that reverential, worshipful attitude of Lord Shiva. We bow to him, or that essence, him, her, whatever. And with the sense of gratitude for these teachings. So I'm going to just say a closing prayer, and you can continue in that mental reverential attitude. Omkaram bindu sanyuktam nityam dhyayanti yoginah kamadam mokshadam chaiva omkaraya namo namaha. Shivam Shantam Jagannatham Lokanugrahakarakam Shivamekapadam Nityam Shikaraya Namo Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you.